So today I've been thinking about learning and um, and not just learning, but thinking about the idea of unlearning. And I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean. Years ago, I had this the hinge on my closet was a little bit loose, and um, it made it necessary that I had to be very careful when I opened the door, and especially careful when I closed it, because I felt like if I pulled it too hard, um, it you know I it might not close properly, and I had to be very careful with it. So I always had to be really tender with that, opening the door and closing the door. And but beyond that, it also made me, without even thinking about it, it made me a little bit nervous every time I I would open or close that closet. And I was doing this program, an early coaching exercise from this guy Thomas Leonard, who I need to do a talk about him alone, because Thomas Leonard was one of the real, I would say, the early pioneers of coaching, and he was just, you know, fantastic in the material that he developed. But he had this one program that was called tolerations. And in the toleration program, you would identify any little thing in your life that was kind of annoying you. And his idea was anything that you're tolerating is somehow draining your energy, and it's taking from you. And so he basically, the exercise was to make a list of everything you were tolerating, and one by one fix them. And the idea was each one gave you energy back. So it's a really fantastic program, and it's a great exercise to go through periodically. It's like, what are you tolerating? What's causing mental friction or static? And so one of the first times I did this, it occurred to me one day, I was like, oh my God, this closet door is a toleration. And I hadn't really noticed it before. And so I got my little toolbox out, and there was a screwdriver. I didn't have to go to the store or anything. I had the screwdriver, and I opened the area around the closet, and I just tightened the hinges. And just like that, all of a sudden, I could open it very easily, and I could close it very easily. And so that was wonderful, and that stopped being a toleration, and there was no need for me to be nervous. However, as time went on, what I realized was when I would go to open that closet door, I was still being very careful, both when I opened it and when I closed it. And I would still get a little bit nervous. And what I realized was that my body had learned this particular response to this closet door. And it took me a while to unlearn it. I think the first thing in unlearning it was really just noticing it. And then it was kind of like each time I went back to that moment, I had to remind myself, like, oh, I can actually open this very easily and enjoy it, enjoy opening it, enjoy closing it. And over time, I eventually unlearned it. From time to time, I talk about the Feldenkrais method, which is I would say, a study of coordination and movement and functioning, physical movement. And one of my buddies, who's a great trainer, he often talks about, somebody will, they might have a problem with their ankle, and so they're limping to make sure that their ankle doesn't hurt. But a strange thing can happen, which is even when their ankle gets healed, some of the limp or the compensation for the ankle will remain. And so some of the Feldenkrais method is about unlearning these patterns that we've learned inadvertently. And then, it sort of asks the question, well, how do I unlearn that? How do I go back either to a state that preceded the injury, or move forward and discover new ways of moving. but basically learning how not to limp. And he says that his job is, he's a de-limper. He's teaching people how not to limp anymore. And I think another place this idea of unlearning comes up is, at times we might have a challenge in a say a particular type of work, and then even when we learn that type of work, when we approach it, we may forget almost that we've already learned that or already solved that, and we might unwittingly feel disempowered because we haven't unlearned that response of this is going to be difficult, or this is going to be complicated or confusing or challenging. So it's like you finally get a key to work, but you're expecting it to be difficult. This buddy of mine used to tell this story. He said, it's like you have a Coke machine, and the Coke machine is broken so that you put in your coins, but in order to get the Coke to drop, you have to kick it. And he said the funny thing with humans is when they finally fix the machine and they put their coins in and the Coke drops, they still want to kick the machine because that's the pattern they've learned. And so at times we have to really kind of catch ourselves, notice, and practice a new pattern so that we can unlearn whatever unneeded pattern we've learned. Like many things, the first step is really just raising awareness and noticing what's the pattern that we've learned that we now need to unlearn. Another example that I think about a lot is when I changed apartments. For many weeks, when I would get out of work, I would head in the direction of my old apartment, and then I would catch myself and realize, oh no, I live this way now. And it took me a while to unlearn that pattern of turning to the right. I had to learn how to turn to the left. So first step is noticing the pattern, and then gradually teaching yourself to move in the other direction. Now, in NLP, we talk about an idea which is called future pacing, which is really just pretending or acting as if, or you could just think of it as mental rehearsal. So our brains learn best by learning patterns. And sometimes it's hard to make a pattern that's spread out over time. So the idea with future pacing is I might imagine myself leaving work and remembering I'm going to turn to the left. And then again, I'll imagine leaving work and turning to the left, and do it a half dozen times until you start to internalize the new pattern or the unlearned pattern. And so that's a little trick you can do. So, because if I was only going into my closet once a week, there's a good chance I'm not even going to notice that there's a pattern to unlearn there. But if I do notice it, I can sort of mentally imagine, okay, I'm going to the closet and, oh, it's fixed. And again, and do it again and again, until your brain starts to immediately internalize the new pattern. So that's a bit about learning and unlearning, and really learning to unlearn. So I hope you experiment with that and make some rich discoveries there.